Welcome to the Real Human Project. Our mission is to help people get to know each other better. I'm Leora, one of the founders of Real Human. This is our public podcast where we shine a light on some of the real human stories recorded by our members. Our project is open to everyone, so please go to realhuman.io to record your episode. Today, we are getting to know Brandon Odell. Full disclosure, Brandon's a friend of mine. We used to work together and had a lovely relationship that was mostly rooted in the workplace and, responding to each other's Instagram stories. But we always stayed in touch. And I gotta say, when I listened to Brandon's Real Human episode, I was floored. So today we all get to know Brandon. He talks about coming out at 12 years old in rural New Jersey. He discusses addiction and recovery and mentions really incredible people who've shaped him. His bravery and introspection and love shine so brightly throughout his episode. Despite my previous relationship to him, listening to Brandon's episode made me realize that the whole time I had just been scratching the surface. So I hope that you listen and enjoy Brandon's stories as much as I did. And I will now hand it over to our AI-powered host, Sam, and the interview with Brandon Odell.
Why don't you tell me about the home and neighborhood you grew up in?
I was born in South Carolina, actually, on a naval base in Charleston, and we moved around a lot. It was about 10 times before I was 18. But primarily, I was in Vernon, New Jersey. That's where I went to school. That's really where I think I grew up. I never really knew my dad. They got divorced when I was very young, and my mom had remarried several times. So there were several father figures that sort of came in and out of my life when I was growing up. But primarily, it was my mom and I.
It sounds like you had a unique upbringing in Vernon, Brandon. Now, did you have siblings growing up? Were they older or younger than you?
I didn't really have siblings growing up until I was 12, and then my sister was born. So I just have one sister. She's technically a half sister, but that's never really been a thing for us. She's just my sister as far as we think. And she's amazing. And she is 12 years younger than me. And that fact was so amazing for our relationship because that age gap allowed us to have a relationship that was free from any strife or fights or competitiveness because we were so far apart in age, so there was really nothing to fight about. And I remember distinctly when she was born wanting to really be intentional with how I showed up for her in her life. And I grew up without a big brother or a big sibling. And so I wanted to make sure that for her, I could be someone who she could look up to and someone who she could count on and someone who she could talk to as she was growing up and learning about herself. And so all of my memories of her from when she was born and a baby and a toddler and just growing up are so great. It has been so special just being able to witness this little human grow up and become who she is today.
Your relationship with your sister sounds incredibly special, Brandon. Now, how would your school friends remember you?
I unfortunately don't keep in really close contact with a lot of them. There were really just a few that I had really close relationships with, and they were so incredibly special to me. And I think being gay in a town like that, in a big high school, was particularly difficult and presented some challenges for me with bullying. But having those friends, it was really in the theater program, uh, was so important for me to be able to explore who I was and be accepted for who I was. I came out as gay when I was 12 years old, and those people in theater just accepted me. It's kind of a stereotypical experience for a gay person, but it was really amazing to be able to have that space to be myself and have friends who just loved me and accepted me and encouraged me to be loud and proud about who I was. So I hope that they would remember me as someone who was brave and courageous and unafraid to stand up to the adversity that I faced back in those days. That's also sort of when drinking and some uh, destructive behaviors started coming into my life, and I started exploring those types of behaviors. So I would hope, looking back, that I wouldn't be remembered for those things and instead be remembered for the things that I am proud of.
It's clear that your time in the theater program and your close friendships were incredibly important to you, Brandon. Now tell me about the best teacher you ever had.
It would be 2 of them. One of them, his name was Mr. Smarth, and I think I was in 4th grade, and he wasn't my teacher, unfortunately, but I do remember distinctly knowing that he was gay. It was a known thing, and he wasn't shy about it, and he didn't hide it, and people loved him. He was so kind, and he was such a force in that school because he was so unafraid to be who he was, and he had such an impact on me, and unknowingly helped give me the confidence that I needed to be able to come out as gay and live authentically as myself. And I did leave him a note in his teacher mailbox once. It said something about, I'm gay, or I think I'm gay, and I admire so much your ability to be yourself. And it wasn't until many years later, recently actually, I found him on social media and I reached out and I just said, I don't know if you remember, but like sent you a note. And he said that apparently the board at the time, he had gone to them and asked if he could respond and talk to me about the things that I had put in my letter, and they had said no. So that was really enlightening. It didn't stick out in my mind back in the day that he didn't respond. It was more so just him living as himself was so inspiring to me. And now I know that he actually wasn't allowed to respond to me. So that was very interesting. But he played a big part in why I did come out so young. And the other teacher was Dr. McKay, Dr. Charles McKay. He taught me English, and he was such an animated, beautiful man who just was so passionate about everything that he was teaching us. I remember specifically we were studying Emily Dickinson and talking a lot about depression. And I was a profoundly depressed boy. And I remember him saying in one of the lessons that two of the paths that can lead someone through depression are therapy and humor. And we talked a lot about that in that class. And I just remember, especially when we were reading Emily Dickinson, I learned so much about depression and about how that can manifest and show up in someone and also be funneled into something that's so creatively beautiful. And that was really impactful for me. So yeah, those 2 guys, they meant a lot to me, and I don't even know if both of them know it, but it's funny looking back how much an educator like that can have an impact on your life.
It's incredible how Mr. Smarth and Dr. McKay had such a profound impact on you, Brandon. Now, what did you decide to do after high school, and why was this a good fit for you at the time?
So, after high school, I didn't really know what to do. My mom and dad had not gone to college, but since everyone else was going to college, I just figured that was something that I should do. And I decided on the College of New Jersey, which was a really strong, accredited public school. I think it was a good fit for me because of the size and the distance from home. I think at that time I had really been feeling like strife in the home and I wanted to get out. I was really not feeling like Vernon was a good fit for me. And like lots of kids do, I think I just wanted to run. I wanted to find who I was. And I knew that college would be an opportunity to really reinvent myself as whoever I wanted to be, just that opportunity to start over. I chose psychology as a major at the time because I was always really interested in the psychology of people and how they worked. And even growing up, I was very introspective and curious about who I was. And I just always was very self aware. So that was my best guess at what I would enjoy doing maybe as a career. I think the prospect of choosing a career that young was so overwhelming for me. So I just kind of did the most general thing that I could do in the field that sounded kind of interesting to me. So all of those things together sort of lent itself to why I chose that path.
Switching gears on your very best day at work, the day you come home and think you have the best job in the world, what did you do that day?
That's a great question, and it's one that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it's really frustrating to feel like you don't know, right? And that makes me so sad. I sort of fell into a tech career and recently was laid off, so I've been reflecting a lot about what I would love to do, and if I'm thinking about what would make me come home and feel like I had the best job in the world, it would be helping someone, especially maybe someone in addiction, which I can relate to. Being able to help someone get through something that I've been through by sharing my experiences and sharing my strength and maybe inspiring some hope in them. I think that would be, at least today, and it does change, at least today, that would be a really good day.
It sounds like making a difference in someone's life, particularly in the realm of addiction, is something that would bring you a sense of fulfillment. That's a worthy goal to pursue. Now, I'm curious, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and who gave you that advice?
If I'm thinking really honestly about the best piece of advice I've ever been given, it's probably come from my recovery. And this might sound dark, but I've been told in my darkest times to not drink no matter what and to not kill myself no matter what. And I know that suicide is so tender and sensitive, and I'm so sympathetic to that. And I think for me, I've had experiences with just being in really dark places and places that took me to taking actions that I wouldn't take today necessarily, but at the time it was all I could do and it was the best I could do. I've had really dark times and alcohol has certainly been the main contributor to that really. And so for me, those are the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given. I've been sober for 7 years now, and even today, that is where my mind goes when life gets really challenging and I feel lost and I feel the weight of the world sort of crumbling all around me. So, those two things are vital to me having the best chance at happiness that I can have. You know, I'm an addict and I know that I can't take that first drink no matter what. And I know that I can't hurt myself. So that's the path that I walk on. You know, no shortcuts in my life anymore. I took those too often when I was younger and they led me nowhere. They led me down a path that I'm very ashamed of and a path that left a lot of damage and destruction in my wake. I'm so grateful for that advice. And I'm so grateful today to be willing to take that advice and to know that those things are not the answer. And I have different solutions these days. And I'm so grateful for that.
Now let's talk about luck. Can you tell me about a time you got really, really lucky?
After I graduated from college, I was pretty desperate for a job. I ended up switching my major from psychology to radio, TV, and film. And I kind of graduated without a job prospect. And a family friend had a connection to a job on a TV show in New York City. And I took it, and it was in accounting, and it was totally not what I wanted to be doing, but I needed a job and it was in the field. And as luck would have it, she was going to be moving, or she actually was based in LA and she was going to be going back there to work on another show. And I had wanted to be in California for a long time. And she offered me a job on her next show. And had that not happened, and had I not said yes to that opportunity, and had she not presented me with that opportunity, my life would not have opened up in the countless ways that it's opened up at this point. And I don't even know if I would have gotten sober. I don't know if I would have been able to experience living in San Francisco, working for a huge tech company and accomplishing some of these dreams that I've had my whole life. So I don't know if I consider that luck, but I know that in that moment and at that time, the universe had my back and there was a bigger plan for me. And I couldn't see it back then. And I was really sad. And I was really coping in destructive ways, but it was all I knew back then. But there were still these grander plans, and I'm so grateful to the person I was back then for saying yes to them.
It's amazing how saying yes to unexpected opportunities can shape our lives. Now tell me about a memorable job interview.
It was probably when I interviewed at BuzzFeed, and they had me come to the office in LA, and I met with Jen Wolner and Matt Riferson, and it was my first time interviewing with a big company, and especially like a tech company. But BuzzFeed was a dream. I had kind of applied just not expecting that it would work out. And so when I was going through the interview loops, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just winging it. And the recruiter had sent me the LinkedIn pages for the people that I would be interviewing with. And I remember specifically for Matt, he had done a kind of like a TED Talk. I think it was at something called GopherCon. It was some kind of tech presentation and talk that he was giving. It was something about coding. I mean, he was a genius engineer, and he, I guess, on his LinkedIn had linked to that video. And I thought going into those interviews, you had to watch and read everything that was in the attached packets and LinkedIn profiles. So I spent, I don't know, days kind of trying to understand what he did and what he had worked on, and watching his presentation at that convention. And I remember sitting in the interview with him, and they couldn't believe that I had sat through that, and he thought it was hilarious and so funny that I had taken the time to do that. And that ended up being the beginning of a very beautiful work relationship, and those two people were so impactful on my career and on my life and on me continuing to become who I was, and they gave me a chance to prove myself in that role, something I didn't have any experience in, and I'm so grateful to them, especially those very humble beginnings. And I'm very grateful that they thought it was funny that I had watched that video.
Next, I have some rapid fire questions for you, Brandon. Try to answer with one word or two. Here comes the first question. If a movie was made of your life, who would play you?
Logan Lerman.
What skill do you wish you had?
I wish I could play an instrument.
A concert you'll never forget?
I'll never forget seeing Katy Perry in Las Vegas.
What have I not asked you about today that I should have?
You haven't asked me what I value, and that's really important to me because it's kind of like a North Star for me in everything I do in life. I can come back to the values that I have and ask myself and see if the choice I'm making or if what I'm doing is in alignment with those values. And, I think inherently I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to make decisions that are not in line with those values. But to have that direction and internal compass has been so instrumental for me. My values are bravery, courage, love, assertiveness, and integrity. If I can even get close to being the type of person that I think embodies those values, then I think I'll have a life well lived.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Brandon. People will love hearing the stories you've shared. This is a public podcast, so it's only as good as the people who are willing to participate. If you would like to take part, go to realhuman.io to record your own episode. We can't wait to hear from you. This is Sam, and you have been listening to The Real Human Project. Goodbye.